Is Monday, December 15th, which is, I hope, what I wrote there, because I keep thinking it's Tuesday. Um, Monday, September 15th, it is the second night of Hanukkah. We discussed this yesterday and countless times before. If you've watched some of our 1600 live streams, that Jewish days start at night. So it is the second night of Hanukkah, which comes before the second day of Hanukkah, which will be tomorrow. I decided that in honor of Hanukkah, I'm going to try and give presents. Now, obviously, yesterday we did this after the sun had set, I said, so I should have given a Hanukkah present yesterday. But Hanukkah presents are a kind of made up thing, so it doesn't really matter. So that's what I wanted to start with before I'm going to wait for Joe to be able to be here, give him at least like 5 minutes to get there. I'm enjoying some Shiraz wine. Those are my friends who make delicious California wine. That's the line, right? All these California wines, so good. Ugh, terrible, Alan Rickman. Not terrible. Could be better. Hey, Dave. Happy Hanukkah. So in honor of Joe, we're going to do an episode where we discuss, as he requested, Cable's pouches, the purpose and creation of. But first, I thought I'd give a tiny little piece of history while I get the requisite level of wine I need to discuss I don't even know what to call that generation. The image generations creations. I wanted this brief history of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is what we call a minor holiday. We do not refrain from things, but we do have an idea of being more happy, being besameach, being in a better mood, sort of forcing ourselves to if we can, because it is a minor holiday where we commemorate great events. Interestingly, OG image, yeah, but this is before image. I'm talking about cable, so it's before image. Yeah, Dave, I'll get there. I'm going to let me do Hanukkah first, okay? This is Joe's request. I want to give him a little time to get here. The Talmud relates the story of the miracle of the oil in a listing of discussing which minor holidays are still kept. There used to be a book of minor holidays, literally good things that had happened. So we don't fast on those days, even if you have a reason to fast. Something befell you or whatever, and you feel the need to fast. You're grieving. You're not allowed to forget to eat on those days because you have to be happy. And Hanukkah is one of them. Hanukkah is one that we keep doing because Hanukkah had a miracle attached to it. And then it goes on to discuss the miracle which took place, as basically everyone who knows the tiniest bit of Jewish lore knows. Right, the oil burned. If you read the story, it's like after the whatever. It's complicated what the Gemara calls these people, but after the Greeks were defeated, left. I don't think they even used the word defeated. Left. We had this issue with the oil. Blah blah blah. A miracle happened. That's Hanukkah. Hanukkah is a commemoration of that miracle. Of despite all the desecration to the temple and to Jerusalem and to the Jewish people, the small bit of pure oil that hadn't been used for idolatrous work, pure, set aside to be used in the temple, that pure oil lasted long enough for new pure oil to be pressed and come in to Jerusalem. That's the miracle of Hanukkah. There is nothing in the miracle of Hanukkah about the Chashmonaim. I mean, they might mention them as at the same time as the Chashmonaim, blah, blah, blah. Or many of the stories we associate Hannah and her sons, tons of those things, they're from the same time period. But the commemoration of the holiday is that specific miracle, and that often gets lost. There are things that are done. We like the menorah, and then the menorah has a whole bunch of laws. But again, they're rabbinic laws. They are not like, if you all 8 days of Hanukkah without lighting a menorah, that is a much lesser offense than going the first day of Sukkot without shaking a lulav and esrog. Like, it's very minor, but because there's a battle that was won, especially post the state of Israel, the Maccabees and the victory sort of started to overshadow things in many directions. More than that, the idea of how the Jews suffered and the Hellenization and all that stuff, which is definitely part of it, is really not what... We don't vilify the culture that tried to assimilate us to a degree that we couldn't worship God. Dave, everyone talks about Judah Maccabee in the right circles. If depending on which part of Judaism you're in, people talk about Judah Maccabee a lot. But the Talmud really doesn't much. He's not a major figure. The idea and why the thing was celebrated, specifically, again, a miraculous thing, a thing that we believe if we believe in divine power, which a lot of people who've put a lot of effort into celebrating Hanukkah don't necessarily. They believe the religion is basically made up, but it's our midwinter holiday. It's ours. And it's like, sure, guys, but that's a holiday about a miracle. Just like Christmas is a holiday about, whether it's an accurate time or not to have said holiday, it's a holiday that celebrates, the birth of Jesus Christ, the King of the Jews and Savior of the world. Like, whatever, that's a pet peeve. People be like, well, I celebrate secular Christmas. And I'm like, you don't, though. You're not celebrating secular Christmas. There's no such thing. You're not celebrating secular Hanukkah. There's no thing. Stuff like that. But that's very personal. That's very much in my head how I think about these things. It's not something I would dare impose on anyone else. I may say it publicly, but you go and do whatever you want. Have fun doing it. That's what we're celebrating. The world can go on around us, and we have certain values that we stick to, and they're going to survive. That's what we're celebrating. Anyway, Cable and his pouches. How's that for a segue? Cable and his pouches. As usual, I mentioned earlier, Joe supported this shop since before there was a shop. Joe was a supporter of the Kickstarter way back in the day. I don't know anyone else who knows of the shop from the Kickstarter. Mark, if you're watching, right, Mark? Mark knew me beforehand. He was a friend of mine beforehand. Emily remembers watching the Kickstarter video, but she can't remember if it's after she went to the shop after the Kickstarter had ended, or if it was before especially before she went to the shop. But that's about it. That's and then there's people who walk in off the street. There's internet friends of mine, like Mark, who know me from beforehand. That's about it. Joe's about as OG as it gets. Joe listened to the podcast that we never talk about, that I did for a little while. Joe loves Can't Hardly Wait and Empire Records. I mean, need we say anything else? So Joe wanted to discuss Cable's pouches. Joe wanted to discuss what are they, why are they, how'd they come out, what are they supposed to be, etc., etc. And I think that this is one of those great examples of who puts the gas in the Batmobile, which Grant Morrison once famously said sort of takes away the joy of comics. He then went on to write the ultimate run of Batman about putting the gas in the Batmobile. But there's your career and there's, what you believe. They're different things sometimes. Cable's pouches, if you look, I actually posted the picture. The picture that's up for this episode is the original sketches by Rob Liefeld. If you look, Cable has in different itinerations before he appeared in print, bandolier of giant bullets, weird metal bits that look like a costume but might be like capsule style Batman, like Batman often had in the late 80s, 90s, where the bat belt had sort of rounded things. It sort of looks like style. Like he clearly wanted this guy to look cool and to be military. The military look, like Dave said, in the Army, you have pouches. You do. Like, you need a lot of different stuff. And I guess the badder you are, or the crazier you are, Batman's belt is full of stuff. I believe, personally, that is the thinking in that. But again, if you go look at the original Liefeld sketches, he wasn't necessarily going to have pouches. It just ended up that that's what he picked. That's what worked. I talked about getting more followers on YouTube and more people talking on YouTube. And this is one of the things someone suggested was be a little bit, negative. And I'm not negative. I think Rob Liefeld deserves an absolute amount of respect for piloting his career. The late 80s and 90s, there were loads of people, right? Exactly, Dave. It was a military, badass, cool kind of look. Rob is a self-trained artist. Rob did not go to art school. Rob was heavily encouraged by two peers, Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee, to just go for it, to not worry so much, to just submit to Marvel when he didn't think he was ready, and when editors told him to do something, to just do the best he could, even if it was something that he really couldn't draw, just do it anyway. And he was really lifted up by people who believed in him. And Fabian Nicieza talks about how Rob would come to him with drawings of these characters. They would say, Marvel told them, we want you to introduce a new character. Or Fabian said, we need to introduce a time-traveling character. And Rob would come with these designs. And then they would, Lee and Kirby, just talk it out. Now, again, in old interviews, Fabian would often say that Rob would say tons of things that weren't used by Fabian. But later, when Rob took over writing, or handled most of the writing in later issues of X-Force, even with Fabian's name on it, these things got used because Rob. So it's absolutely true that he invented this stuff and he thought about this stuff, but most of the design of the characters that would become known as X-Force were because they looked cool. That was it. That is the logic of them. That is the reason for them. Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, those peers of Rob who really lifted him up, I think, spiritually, in encouragement. I don't mean that they pulled strings or anything. Trust me, if you would have seen what was being put out by Marvel at that time, what kind of art was, you would not really be shocked that they used Rob Liefeld. But Rob continued to give himself a career, and he became one of the hottest sellers through two things. One, a complete disregard for what we call the rules of a page. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Rob's, again, his contemporaries. Todd McFarlane was a student of comics heavily. He had specific mentors, specific people, but he dug deep. You could hear he would reference Winsor McKay. Very early on in Spawn, he would make references to it in the art, but he would also talk about it. Todd really dug deep and was always trying, up to a certain point, to visually and artistically challenge himself through the art. When he worked at major publishers, Marvel for the Hulk and Batman, and then back at Marvel for Spider-Man, up until his Spider-Man comic, he didn't really have full creative freedom. So he would try to do things, but scripts from, a Dick Giardino edited script, right? They're going to be like, there's 6 panels and 2 of them are inset, and you have to follow that. It's on Spider-Man that he really took off into things, and in that sense, he came like a year and a half after Rob's appearances. But if Spider-Man #1 or the later issues, because the later issues of Amazing are still something, but they're not the level of Spider-Man #1's freedom with the page, opening stuff up. If that would have come out before Rob got to get in on New Mutants, I don't believe Rob would have been as big hit as he was. But Jim Lee also, he would move his page. It was always interesting until X-Men #1, where he got to just throw panels wherever he wanted them and go crazy with the page, which, again, we're not doing negative here, but It's why I'm not a huge fan of Jim Lee. But Rob got there first. Now, again, Shaken had done all of this ad nauseum through American Flag. Obviously, um, Kirby, while still being very true to things in stuff like the Fourth World, he loved playing with the depth of field and the space. This really weren't new, but they were new for the generation. When you compare Neil Adams, early 70s, late 60s covers that are like, whoa, for the time. So you go, yeah, but there's the spirit. Like, there's always something that's done this before, but each generation has their own. So the real Marvel and DC and then eventually Image basically throwing away the grid structure of panels and really not caring about anatomy in a way that their first cartoon styled anatomy of the 30s, 40s, and 50s to the realistic cartoon styles of the late 50s into about the 70s until you get cartoon realism. You get Gene Colan and the house styles of DC following Kurt Swan, and this is what's called cartoon realism. This is trying to look like believable people, but exaggerated with simple features. And that's what's going on throughout the 80s. People are playing with it in the indie fields. I would hesitate to say that the Peonies are doing cartoon realism, except they are. The details they're using to make the elves and ElfQuest look the way they do is cartoon realism. Colleen Doran kicks it up a notch. Other people are doing a lot more before these guys come along. But for a Marvel book to just Rob Liefeld would have these pages where it was like one figure standing here and he's talking and there's lines underneath that are his eyes while he's talking, and over here are people's reactions, and people were like, this is insane, this is crazy. And that made him really popular. But I don't think he really gave any kind of thought in the slightest sense to what was in Cable's pouches or why Cable needed so many pouches or what the point of the pouches were. They are militaristic, militaristic design. No, shorthand. Let's say shorthand. This guy's he's soldier. He's a warrior, and that's all. That's all Cable's pouches are. Anyway, what's this? What did I do? What? Oh, okay. Anyway, yeah. So that's Cable's pouches. Happy Hanukkah, Joe. I hope you enjoyed the lecture. And we'll be back tomorrow with new books. We're less than 10 new books tomorrow. Like 7 or 8 books. And yeah, until then, remember, damn it, babies, you gotta be kind.